All right, hey guys, welcome to the Made in Sims podcast. Last month, we had the opportunity to sponsor the Sims Chamber of Commerce Luncheon, and with that, we were able to pick the speaker. So I picked my buddy Bradley Flowers over at Portal Insurance, which is also the host of the Insurance Guys podcast. So whenever he spoke about social media, and the importance of having a podcast or sponsoring a podcast for your business. So this podcast is going to look a little bit different, but I wanted to share some of those tips and clips with you. Check it out. Today's podcast has been sponsored by Timbo's Car Detailing. Do you have a car, a truck, an SUV, boat, or RV, and it needs to be washed, just looking dingy or dull? Give Timbo a call. If you don't have time to take it to him, he can come to you. He specializes in washes, waxes, clay bar, and paint correction. Mention that you heard him on the Made in Sims podcast, and you'll receive 15% off your first services with him. His phone number that he can be reached to set up an appointment is 251-232-3714. Today's podcast has been sponsored by Sims Nutrition. Are you sitting at your desk at work or driving around and you're almost falling asleep and you want something to make your day better? Stop by Sims Nutrition, located on Moffett Road in Sims, Alabama. If you don't know what you want for lunch and you really don't want something hot, go by there and get a shake. Awesome meal replacements, loaded teas, coffees. It helps me get through 90% of the days that I have. Working long hours, you need to pick me up. Definitely the place to go. Go check them out and make sure you mention that you heard them or saw them on the Made in Sims podcast.
So a little bit about me. My name's Bradley Flowers. I was born in Mobile, raised in Atmore, live in Saraland now. In 2019, I founded Portal Insurance. We're now based downtown Mobile. You guys know where Callahan's is. Our office is on the same street as Callahan's. We write insurance pretty much all throughout the Southeast. In 2017, I founded the Insurance Guys podcast along with a buddy of mine. We are now, I think, the number one podcast in the insurance industry. It's essentially a marketing podcast that leans towards insurance. 2019, we won the Safeco Liberty Mutual Agency for the Future for a lot of the technology work we do. I'm a huge marketing buff. I was a marketing guy before I was an insurance guy. And one of the things I tell people, a story I tell people is my wife is here today. Me and my wife, in 2018, we're on our way to a trip to Nashville, and we stopped by the Jack Daniel's distillery in Lynchburg, Tennessee to do a tour. And it's probably isn't the best story to tell in a church, but I'm now realizing that. We stopped by the Jack Daniel's distillery in Lynchburg, Tennessee, and has anybody been there? Okay, I got a bunch of other people to admit it too. And they take you through the whole thing, and they tell you how Jack made the whiskey and why it's made that way today, and it's the whole story. And you get to the end, and you leave. And so later that night, we met up with some friends in Nashville who had been there earlier that day, not with us. And the guy looked at me, he's like, "Do you just really want to drink some Jack Daniels right now?" I was like, "Yeah, I do, and I can't explain it." And it took me a couple months to realize it was because I knew the story behind why it was the way that it is that I wanted to do that. And I think that when you're marketing your business, how many people own or run a business here? Most everybody. When you're marketing your business, the absolute best thing you can do is tell a story, because what happens is it gets your audience and your listeners and your customers and your prospects, it gets them emotionally invested and emotionally tied to your story. And whenever I speak, I know Kenneth asked me to speak on marketing or social media. I always try to give very tactical advice and things that you guys can take in your business today and use. And I'm going to give you a couple things today. This is a quote I like to start a lot of my presentations with, and I will read it for you since I'm the one up here. It says, Swiss scientist Konrad Gessner called for total governmental regulation over a ubiquitous handheld media device that threatened to flood our minds with information causing confusing and harmful results. Now, you may listen to that and think, you can't read it, so you have to listen to it. You may think, what is he talking about? Twitter? Is he talking about social media? What's he talking about? But he's not talking about any of that, because he lived in the 1500s and he was talking about books. So I like to start with that to say, like, these new technologies, new mediums, new medias like podcasting, whether we agree with it, whether we consume it or not, there's nothing we can do to stop them from taking over and interjecting themselves in our lives. Would everybody agree with that? Like, we can't stop books. We can't stop smartphones. I think we're at the point now where pretty much everybody has a smartphone. So through my podcast, we have a podcast and our target audience are insurance agents. That's our main podcast. Now, when we decided to start the show, we had one of two options. We're both insurance agents. I say we, me and my co-host. We had two choices. Do a podcast for the industry, for other insurance agents, literally helping our competition, or do a podcast for consumers, where consumers could learn about insurance and then reach out to us for insurance. We did not want to get sued for putting too many people to sleep while they were driving down the road talking about insurance, so we decided to talk to the industry. That way they could learn about things that we're learning about. And you guys would be shocked, even though there's not a goal of generating business for my company from that, how much insurance we write from that, because we have insurance agents in other states who have clients that move here and they reach out to us to help them with their insurance. So some podcast stats: 60% of US consumers listen to podcasts, 65% of those listen to the entire episode. How many people here post like videos on Facebook or have posted videos on social media for marketing purposes? The average retention on a video posted to Facebook is 7 seconds. Whereas the average retention of a podcast, 65% of those listen to the entire episode. 45% of podcast listeners make more than $250,000 a year. So I don't either. But it's very clear with this, you're getting a higher, not only are you getting a higher quality potential prospect, but they're actually listening and taking into the fact that this is valuable content and I'm going to do something with this information. It's not, how many of you guys get on your smartphone and you do this? Right? Like, oh yeah, somebody saw your post, but they were scrolling 90 miles an hour, right? You're not getting that with this, right? So I want to give you guys, and I'm going to be real quick today, I'm not going to take up a ton of your time. I want to give you guys 2 ways to use podcasting to get customers for your business. Everybody good with that? Is that what everybody wants? That's why you come to chamber function, pick up customers for your business. One of them involves you doing a podcast, the other one does not. So for those of you thinking, I ain't going to get on there like Kenneth and interview people, I have an option for you, okay? So the number one way is to start a podcast, okay? And podcast is a loose term. It doesn't have to be audio only. It doesn't have to be video only. It can be a mix of both. So through my show, I had a lot of insurance agents reach out to me and they asked me, hey, Bradley, I'm trying to do one of the, it's always one of 3 things. It's either I'm trying to grow in a niche, I'm trying to grow in a community, or I'm trying to be known in a geographical area, Southeast or something like that, right? I target contractors. Kenneth's podcast, it just so happens he has a business that serves the community of Sims. So it's the perfect thing for your business. So the first thing I would tell you is when you are thinking about doing a podcast for your company, think about who your target audience is. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to sell to other businesses? Are you trying to sell in a certain niche in those businesses? For example, let's use contractors. Let's say you had a business that serves contractors. Those are your target clients. How many people are here in B2B? You're selling to other businesses? So your target niche is a specific type of person in a specific industry. Literally, do a podcast where you interview people in that industry. Every industry in the entire world, even the sanitation industry, has influencers. Everybody likes that word. Everybody hates that word. It's a dirty word. But every industry has these people who are considered thought leaders in that industry. Literally, all you're going to do is pick up your phone and reach out to them and ask them to interview you on your podcast, to interview them on your podcast. When we first started our show, we were booking pretty big names in the insurance industry. I mean, we were interviewing, I remember we booked a guy who charges $10,000 to give a speech, among other things. And I had people reaching out like, how did you interview him? It was Tom Hegna, actually. Scott, I know you probably know Tom Hegna. how did you get Tom Hegna? Like, did you reach out to his publicist? Did you pay him? I was like, no, I picked up my phone and I went to Facebook and I sent him a message and said, hey, Tom, you want to come on my podcast? But the interesting thing about podcasting is you're putting that person on a pedestal. You know what I mean? You're stroking their ego, not your own. You are, I tell people all the time with our show, the guests are the rock stars, not us. The guests are, our goal is to elevate them as much as we humanly possibly can. And if you were to reach out to that thought leader in that industry, right? And you were to say, hey, I want to book a meeting with you. I mean, they might say yes, they might say no, here's my secretary's number, blah, blah, But if you say, hey, I want to interview you on my podcast, there's a difference there. You know what I mean? Anybody here been on the news? It's kind of cool when they call you to be on the news, unless there's like a tornado ripped through your neighborhood. But generally speaking, like Studio 10, those kind of things, it's cool, Oh, wow, okay, I'm getting to do some media today. The cool thing about a podcast is nobody knows what anybody's numbers are. Right? The only reason I can tell you that we're the most downloaded in the insurance industry is because we all got into a contest and we started comparing numbers. But everything is behind the scenes. So this person that you're asking to be on your show doesn't know if you have 300 listeners or 300,000 listeners. Does that make sense? So the second thing that you can do, well, let me back up. So if you're interviewing people in your niche, not only can you literally make a target prospect list, make a prospect list of your top 50 dream clients, reach out to their CEOs, reach out to their CMOs, whoever's running that company, and ask them to be on your show. If you're literally getting meetings, does that make sense? You're literally getting meetings with the people who you want to sell to. Not only that, if you have a bunch of people in your industry, let's say I had a business and waste management companies were my target clients. I'm going to go interview every single person who has any kind of influence in the waste management industry. Guess who's going to listen to it? Other waste management people. So you attract an audience of people who are your target clients. And here's what's going to happen. When you bring these people on, you have a genuine, thoughtful conversation where you're asking them questions about their business. And then at the end, it's like, hey man, when you get off air, I'd love a shot at your business. They're going to say yes. If they don't say yes, you either A, they're a jerk and don't appreciate everything you've just done for them, or B, you have what I call the brother-in-law problem. I have my business with my brother-in-law, that whole thing. It's one of those two. Well, then what's going to happen, and I promise you this is going to happen, and you can probably attest to this, you're going to have people reach out to you. And they're going to say, hey, I want to be on your show. And I'm not saying you literally do this. This is just a figure of speech. But so in the insurance industry, we have what they call X dates, which are the expiration date of their current insurance. You want everybody's X date because that's the best time to call them about insurance. Hey, man, I would love to have you on my show. Let me get an X date. Obviously, you don't go that literal and direct with it, but you're in a position of leverage there where you can say, hey, look, I love a shot at your business, and yeah, we can absolutely do that. The second thing, answer the most common questions in your industry that your customers will have. So some of you may think, man, I don't want to do an interview show. I did a little interview yesterday for the Saraland Chamber. I wasn't in the mood. I had to power through it. I just didn't feel like doing it. Some of you are like, that's not my jam. I'd rather just be on camera or on audio or on video and talk. Answer the most common questions in your industry. So there's a website. I want every single one of you who cares about your business to write down. It's called answerthepublic.com. Answerthepublic.com. It is a reverse Google search engine. I think it's still free. Basically, you can put a word in there like insurance, like waste management, and it's going to basically reverse engineer a Google search and give you literally thousands of questions that people are searching about that topic online. So not only are you getting the exact problems and things that your target clientele are searching on Google, but you get it formatted in the most popular ways that they're searching it. So when you title your podcast or you title your video, you literally title it that. That way when they search waste management in Sims, Alabama, Ken comes up. You know what I mean? literally just do a series of 50 episodes where you're on camera or on audio and you're answering the very questions that your target clientele is wondering. And now you have this knowledge base that you can do so many different things with. Number 3, interview people in your community, right? You guys have heard the term be the mayor of your village. Be the person that when you walk into a Sims Chamber of Commerce luncheon, everybody knows who you are. Literally just interview people in your community, which is what Ken's doing. Not that this was the very reason you did it, but interview people, become that local celebrity, for lack of a better word. And the cool thing about this, especially this third strategy, is there's not a major news outlet in Sims, Alabama or Saraland, Alabama. You can literally become, and I think we talked about this a little bit, you can literally become the news source, whether you want to or not. You're the source of information for certain things in your community. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you go to some of these events sometimes and you see like Bob Grip walk in. Like, there's nothing special about Bob Grip, but everybody's like, oh, it's Bob Grip. Like, you build a little bit of that persona with yourself in your community. So this is just to give an example. So I started a podcast. Originally, it was called the Power of Positivity Podcast, and then another Power of Positivity podcast tried to sue me. So we changed the name after the first episode. We changed the name to Centers of Influence. So we posted this. This was the first episode. Jeff Roberts with Yellowhammer Coffee was the guest. Y'all don't know him, do you? Perfect first guest, by the way. Like, basically, it was just me and him. We were actually in a church, and I interviewed him. That was it. Tell me about your business. Tell me what your goals are. How'd you start it? Where do people find you? Super simple. With those 3 or 4 questions, you can get an entire episode from there. 15, 20 minutes. It got 861 views, but that was 2 weeks later, as you see. So I posted this at lunchtime on like a Tuesday, okay? So my goal with this show was to do a show locally that will attract other people to learn about Portal Insurance and possibly reach out to us for business. That's it. That was my goal. So I posted this at 12 o'clock. There's me and Jeff. I posted this at 12 o'clock, and I'm not going to read that. But at 3 o'clock, I got an email from someone at Marco's Pizza Corporate telling me that they had an owner here in Mobile who owns 2 or 3 locations, and they wanted me to interview them. Now, I cannot explain to you, one of our niches with insurance or restaurants, how much that hit us in the screws with what we could insure restaurant-wise. Perfect. Don't serve alcohol, don't fry anything, easy. 3 hours after I posted the episode. And I remember like freaking out. I remember exactly where I was in my old office. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is the best case study ever when I give these presentations to prove to people. And the reason I did this, the thing that pushed me to start the show is I would have these insurance agents reach out to me or business owners, and I would like go through, am I good on time? You're good. I would have them go through the strategy with them. And I would just pour my heart. This is how you do it. This is your list. This is the equipment you need, just for an hour. Pour my heart out to them, and nobody would do it. So I was like, I'm going to do this just to prove to people it can be done. Man, my slide guy did terrible. So when it comes to distribution of your show, here's the cool thing about doing this podcast is each individual episode is a standalone piece of content to promote your business. Would everybody agree with that? How many people here know of the Joe Rogan podcast? It's the #1 podcast in the world. Joe Rogan's the David Letterman of our generation. He has more viewers and listeners on the short clips, which are excerpts from his entire episodes, than he does on the actual full episode. So what you do is you take each one of these episodes, and within each 10 minute to hour long episode, they're short 3 to 5 minute clips. There's 3 to 4 short to 3 5-minute clips that you can break out and are standalone pieces of content. So some of you thinking like, hey, I know I need to do social media for my business. I don't even know where to start. I sell insurance. This is the most boring thing on the face of this planet. How do I promote this? Do a podcast. Use one of these strategies. Do a podcast. You break out the short clips. You have your entire marketing plan, and all you've done is this one show. Does that make sense? So you've created this content for your business, but here's the cool thing. And then you have blog posts as well. Each episode can be transcribed. There's services out there. There's one called Content Cucumber that I use. You can send them a podcast episode or a video, and they'll have a writing student who's US-based write a blog post on the data on the content in that episode. Does that make sense? So here's what's cool is the content you're creating. If I were to show you guys a video, if I were to post a video on social media, and let's pretend all you guys would see it, and it's an interview with me and Ken, or it's me talking about uninsured motorists on car insurance, which one are you more likely to listen to? The interview with me and Ken. So you're creating content that your target audience not only is interested in, they are going to listen to it and watch it and know the story and everything behind your company and get to know you and your personality. Y'all get that? So it's better, more quality content. Second thing, and this is much faster, is buy ad space on podcasts. Ken's like, yeah. Find a podcast that serves your niche. I guarantee you, no matter how boring the industry is, like I'm in the insurance industry. Like next week, I'm going to speak at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at an insurance conference. Like it doesn't get any more boring than insurance, and there's cool stuff in the industry. Like I guarantee you, no matter the industry, accounting, there are accounting podcasts. One of the niches we serve on the insurance side is trucking. I'm getting ready to run some ads on some trucking podcasts. Okay? Find a podcast in that niche, reach out to them and say, hey, I want to run an ad on your podcast. How much does it cost? I promise you, I do not think there is a better ad spend than buying ads on a podcast because of all those stats I told you guys in the beginning with the retention and all that stuff. And here's the cool thing is when new forms of advertising come out, how many people ran Facebook ads like years ago? You'd spend $2 and reach 3,000 people. When these new forms of advertising come out, the cost per thousand people seeing this ad is always undervalued. So the average CPM cost per thousand, I don't know why it's M, for a podcast is about $50. So somebody has 2,000 listeners, you're literally getting in front of 2,000 listeners for $100. According to Super Listeners' 2021 report, podcast ads are the most recalled type of ad, with 86% of responders remembering an ad. To give you guys clarification, 86% of people say they can recall an ad from a podcast. For a Facebook ad, it's like 10%. It's extremely low. So all that stuff I told you guys, if you think, I don't want to do all that, I want to create a podcast, I don't want to do that, find someone doing a podcast in an industry that you want to target and buy ad space on that podcast. Here's the catch. You got to get your lead magnet right. The thing that you're sending them to, the website, that sort of thing. So what I would suggest, if I'm Air Specialty and I'm buying an ad on a podcast, I would set up a text to number. So text Air to this number. That way it's easy for the listener to opt in and inquire about your services. Okay, I appreciate it.